Hi, welcome to this evening's JPPI, Jewish People Policy Institute webinar about the ongoing conflict in Gaza. I'm Yaakov Katz, a senior fellow at JPPI, and I'm joined this evening by Dennis Ross, former ambassador and long veteran diplomat with a specialty in the Middle East, of course. I think, Dennis, you told me in a previous conversation, you've probably been here thousands of times. We'll talk about that maybe. But we're also going to be joined by Professor Yedidya Stern, a couple of technical difficulties, but he will be joining us shortly, the president of JPPI. And tonight we're going to focus just on a conversation with Dennis and a conversation with Yedidya. We've been doing a panel over the week, or the last 2 weeks since the war began. So Dennis, because you're here, I want to start with probably what is the most obvious question, which is President Biden was here yesterday. And I think, Israelis are feeling that warmth, right? Really from this president and his administration. Blinken here twice, Austin here. You know a lot of these people. You know them personally. You spent many hours, I can imagine, days in briefings along crises like these with these folks. What can you tell us about, just on a more personal level? What is Biden? What is really drawing him to this?
Biden is the only American president who ever has defined himself as a Zionist by design. And he tells the story, and he told it, in his initial speech responding to what happened on October 7th. He told it again when he was in Israel. I had heard it many times. The Golda Meir statement to him, our secret weapon is we have no place else to go. That had a searing effect on him. I think he was 29 years old at the time. But he also talks about how his father deeply ingrained in him the idea that the Jews had a right to a state. So you have someone who has grown up with this in an emotional way. We all have emotional intelligence, and his emotional intelligence ties him to Israel. The idea, he is the first American president to go to Israel during a war. He's not just the first American president to call himself a Zionist, he's the first American president to go to Israel during a war. And he did that because he understood the shock of October 7th. Even when he says October 7th was like 15 9/11s for us. You see the emotional attachment that he has. He also felt, he wanted to be able to have an effect on what's happening in Gaza from a humanitarian standpoint. I think he wanted to have a different kind of conversation than you can have even in this kind of a video. It's just not the same. I often say as a negotiator, it's nice to have these video conferences, but sitting next to someone, the body language, the way you see them react is just not the same. I think he wanted to have a conversation with Bibi and with the war cabinet and get a better sense. Okay, what are the military aims? How feasible are they from your standpoint? What's your sense of how this works? How do you try to contain the civilian fallout and your own cost, by the way? And how do you prepare the ground for what comes after? Because there has to be a day after. So I think a lot of this it was emotionally driven for sure. But I think this feel about if I'm there, we get a better understanding of where things are going, and also there's a potential to influence the direction of things as well.
So did you get a sense from the remarks that he made of what are the boundaries or borders that he's laid out for Israel? What are the rules of engagement almost? Did you get that sense?
A little bit. I mean, when he said later, I asked Prime Minister some hard questions, I interpret that as, okay, so tell me about your military strategy. I understand. And when he said publicly, don't let your rage consume you, he wanted to know there's very clear thinking about what's going to be done from a military standpoint, that this isn't just a kind of retribution. Instead, what it is a considered approach that also has a political endgame in mind, and it's one that could actually be feasible and achievable.
Yeah. So Yedidya, thank you for joining us, president of JPPI. I want to start with you, Didia. You went down south this week. We're 2 weeks now, almost into this conflict. Hard to believe. I was thinking about this today, that it was 2 weeks ago Shabbat that this horror began. And it's this constant, everybody in Israel feels like it's this daily battle, right? Everybody is involved, whether you're on the front lines, you're back home, the civilian effort. It's really remarkable. But I do want to hear your thoughts, Yedidia, from that visit to the kibbutzim down south, what it was like. And I'm going to share a couple of photos that you took that I think will be, valuable for people to watch and see while you speak.
Shalom, everybody. Sorry for being late. Some technical problems. I was asked to go to Kibbutz Be'eri, which is the largest kibbutz around Gaza Strip. And I believe this place will be known in Israeli history and maybe in Jewish history for a long time. This is a pastoral place with about 1,000 people. In the middle of the desert, you see like an island of beauty, grass, the most taken care of houses, just, a paradise. The Israeli dream, the Zionist dream becomes true next to Gaza in the desert. So I went there and I saw Gehenom. I saw, just the opposite. I saw hell. Some of the houses are still the same way they are. That's why I can compare. But you go into the houses, everything is obviously open now. And I was escorted by IDF spokesperson. And it's like in Pompeii. If you visit in Pompeii, just stay with this, Yaakov, for a minute. In Pompeii, the eruption of a volcano captured life as it was at the minute the eruption came in. And when the lava cooled down, you see life. Now you go into these houses, beautiful houses. And the previous picture, you saw the candlesticks of Shabbat. Maybe you want to go back to it, you will see next to it, very emotional. On the left side, you see the etrog. This is an undati place, and you see the flowers of Shabbat. And this is a little part, I'm not bringing anything which is, pornographic or violent too much, but some symbols. The next slide, you can see wherever you go in Be'eri, you see libraries, books. And this is just one picture of many. You can see on the right-hand side, Alterman, which is the Israeli famous poet of the beginning of the state. And next to it, this is almost unbelievable, Catch 22. You see Milkud 22 in the middle. Now, Catch 22 is the book that making war ridiculous, explaining all of us, whoever is in the right age, how war can be unacceptable. And that's what you see. You see on one hand, the famous poet of Israel, and on the other hand, something against any kind of war. Please proceed, Yaakov. Go back. The other way around, please. Yeah, here we go. You see, this is a famous Israeli flag. On it, you can see the sticker of those who were out demonstrating against whatever, the judicial reform, so to speak. This is a leftist place. And the terrorists who came in murdered somebody who was interested, obviously, in peace. And you see the big doobie, the big bear in the middle, so Hamish. Go forward, please. I don't know if any of you saw the Clockwork Orange movie. And the most brutal part of it, from the 70s by Stanley Kubrick, it's like a dystopian kind of crime film. And when the criminals are going in order to rape and kill, Stanley Kubrick you see home in the entrance. That's what I saw. The terrorists who came in saw home, and entered the door and killed. Go ahead, please, Yaakov. This is just one picture. You see, this is the door of the mamad, or for the secure room. And this family was saved, not because the door was so good. You can see on the bottom part, they threw a hand grenade trying to open it, and they shoot the door itself. But against the security rules, this specific family used a hook on the top part, and the terrorists from outside didn't know that. So he wasn't able to shoot whatever was holding the door, as this specific family was rescued. So I think that's enough to give you some kind of the feeling. I want to tell you that you come out of this place and you ask yourself, who are our enemies? What kind of people? And I don't want to talk cliches. Whoever knows me, I'm a peace person all my life. And you ask yourself, what is the future of any kind of peace when you're facing fundamentalists who are being moved by a hatred that cannot be understood in any way? I believe, and by this I want to finish this, I believe that Be'eri should be the revenge, not the number of people we will kill in Gaza. Obviously, we have to kill Hamas people, that's obvious. But the real revenge will be that the terror will be defeated by all of us taking care of Be'eri and making it a living symbol, not a matzeva, not how do you say matzeva?
Not a monument, a memorial. Right.
Not a monument, but a living thing. We have to rebuild it. This is a thing that all of us should be committed to. Be'eri will survive and flourish, hopefully with the same people.
Thank you, Yedidia. So Dennis, just playing off of what Yedidia just said, one of the things that I think for Israeli ears was, I don't want to say hard to hear, but very disconnected, was when the president, for example, talks about the two-state solution or Palestinian self-determination. Like here we are with Israelis feeling what Yedidia just articulated so well. This is a battle for survival, right? And we have to go now and fight. And this is, we've now discovered again or anew, who is this? What is the nature of the enemy that we are fighting against? It's not what we thought. So this idea that we're going to go to war, we're going to try to destroy Hamas, capture and kill as many Hamas fighters and leaders, and then there's a two-state solution. Like, where is the U.S. coming from with this?
Well, I think where the U.S. is coming from is that you can defeat Hamas, and by the way, you have to defeat Hamas, because if Hamas comes out of this not decisively defeated, and by decisively defeated I mean you really have generally disarmed. I don't mean every single Hamas fighter, but I mean their whole military infrastructure has to be destroyed. Their leadership has to be decapitated. They cannot be in a position to prevent a new administration in Gaza in the aftermath. And it won't be an Israeli administration because Israel doesn't want to stay there. It'll have to be some kind of technocratic administration with Palestinians under an international rubric, maybe with a number of different Arab states helping to provide with civil administration, police forces, not military forces, because that implies occupation, and a reconstruction plan that has a built-in set of monitors and controls and so forth. Once you have that, and you've defeated Hamas in a way that also defeats the ideology of rejection, then you can begin to talk again about some kind of political process for the future. I believe you'll see normalization with Saudi Arabia come back with Israel if Hamas is decisively defeated, because you're defeating that ideology. I believe it will not come back if Hamas comes out of this looking like it's seceded, because then there'll be an enormous tailwind for that ideology, and it'll put all these Sunni Arab regimes on the defensive. So the stakes are very high here, but let's assume that the outcome is one where they're decisively defeated. You're not going to produce two states anytime soon, but you can change the trajectory of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and process. And I think it comes back to, in my mind, something that has to happen within Israel. There has not been a debate within Israel, a serious debate within Israel about what to do with the Palestinians. Not since the Second Intifada, because that killed the peace camp, and it basically basically destroyed any real discussion about this. I suspect that in the aftermath of this, everyone says correctly that there can't be recriminations right now. And there can't be, because there's a job that has to be done. But this will end at some point. And there'll be not only a day after for what happens in Gaza, but there'll be a day after for what happens in Israel. And there'll be a reckoning at that point. But there'll also be, for the first time, a debate about what to do about the Palestinians. There'll be those who will say, look, this just shows you can't afford a Palestinian state because look what could emerge in it. Right. But there'll also be those who will say, you know what, if we killed Hamas effectively as a rejectionist front against us, basically remove the ISIS threat from us. But if we freeze the situation under Israeli terms, there will be Palestinians who will emerge who will be successors to Hamas. If there is no hope and no possibility for Palestinians, that will be the result. If there is hope and possibility for Palestinians, then there can be a different future. Those two different schools of thought deserve to be debated. We really haven't had that debate in Israel. I believe one of the consequences of what Hamas has done is it will produce that in time. Not now, but just as I think there'll be a reckoning politically, there'll also be a debate that is overdue in Israel.
Maybe. Yedidi, I'm curious what your thoughts are on this, because, I hear from a lot of people, even left-wing, center definitely, who are like, there's no comeback for the left in this country. This is it. We're going to have to live by the sword. That's what we're learning from all of this. We have to be strong. It's all about force projection now. There's no future for weakness. Do you see that the Israeli sentiment? Now, by the way, I'll just use this as an example, the humanitarian corridor, right? So in previous conflicts, there was always a humanitarian corridor. In this conflict, Israel had refused until now. The president requested it of Israel. Israel agreed only through Egypt, not through Israel. And even that is causing controversy in here. You got the hostage families, which are coming out against it. You have other people within the government who have come out against it. So Yedidia, how do you kind of see this playing out in the Israeli social level?
First of all, right now, the blood is boiling, obviously. We're all so angry. And this is not a time to have a real projection for the future, for the longer run. And I agree with Dennis that we cannot just trust our power. We have to find other ways of dealing with the situation. For the longer run, we cannot occupying millions of Palestinians without any horizon. But right now, our security depends on our ability to be not vicious, but clear, very clear. I think the Arab world is looking at us. And this is time for Israel to be not we used to be. We have to be very clear. We have to go all the way. It doesn't mean, and I want you to listen carefully to me, it doesn't mean that we should not give humanitarian aid to innocent people. There is a problem. How do you do it? How do you make sure that you do it in the right way and not helping your enemies? Listen, I'm very much invested personally as a family in this war. 4 of my sons are fighting. 2 of them were already on Simchat Torah, on Shabbat, they were fighting. The other 2 are right now on the gates of Gaza. Within a day, 2 or 3, we don't know, they will be inside. 4 sons and 2 sons-in-law. So I'm very much invested. Do I have hate to Palestinians per se? No. Do I think that all Palestinians are responsible? No. But do I care more about my kids and about the future of my country than I care about these Palestinians? Yes. Yes. And you have to balance these considerations. Humanitarian aid also has some kind of efficiency to us. It gives us more time to fight. It's not only because we'll try to help them, it's also helping us. We have to do it in a smart way. And whenever there is a doubt, don't give it. Whenever you feel that this might help our enemies, don't give it. But try to give it as much as you can. Regarding the far future, listen, whoever I talk to in Israel tells me there is no center anymore in Israel. There's no center anymore in Israel when you talk about the conflict. time will tell what will happen. We know that when you shake everything, when reality is being shaken, many things can change and can be turned around to the other way if we'll have a chance. If we'll have a real partner. We didn't see a real partner for so many years, but maybe when you play it anew and you will have a partner, horizon will arise.
And maybe, Dennis, that's also what the president is talking about, right? Is at the end, and you hinted at this with regards to the potential for the Saudi deal to come back, that maybe there is some grant, I was thinking about this today in a piece that I was writing for the weekend about the way conflicts until now have ended, Israel's wars of the last 20 years, let's say. So if we go back to the last large war, which was the Second Lebanon War, it ended with Security Council Resolution 1701, right? Which was not effective, but that's what ended the war. You go to the first big Gaza operation, 0809, Cast Lead. That was already, there was some Egyptian with American oversight of weapons, didn't really work, but it was pretty much a ceasefire. And every Gaza war since then has been a ceasefire, usually brokered by the Egyptians. I think in this case, everyone understands this isn't going to be another ceasefire, right? There's not going to be some ceasefire that's going to come in and both sides will say, okay, we'll agree to it, you agree to it, they'll fire a couple more rockets like they always do till, a little after to show we're still good. And that'll be it till the next round. No, this is something else. So maybe there is some grand diplomatic initiative potentially that America could put together and cook up that would include the Saudis, include the changing of the regime in Gaza, which Israel will have hopefully toppled and decimated. Is that something that could be on the table?
That's very much what I have in mind. After something like this, it gets what Yedidia said, that this is an earthquake, a psychological earthquake. And you have to wait at one level for everything to settle, but you can't really wait a long time because you'll have a moment to try to change things in the immediate aftermath. And when I say change things, I mean Gaza has to be transformed from what it was. And the only way to transform Gaza from what it was is for Hamas not to be in a position to block the change. Right. After 2009, 2012, 2014, 52 days in 2014, all sorts of talk about, gee, we're gonna create a mechanism for reconstruction, you'll have oversight. And Hamas blocked it because it was still there. It was still in control. Now, the paradigm for Israel changed because the paradigm was, okay, it's not great. There's a cost every couple of years, but the cost of managing this is less than the cost of having to go back into Gaza. Okay, that model proved to be wrong and unfortunately discovered in a horrendous, tragic way. So there is going to be a different approach, but again, there has to be an outcome. Israel does not want to stay in Gaza. That's a prescription for then basically facing the kind of ongoing conflict within Gaza. So you don't want to stay in Gaza. But you need something to replace you. If you're in the end, Hamas is displaced, you can't leave a vacuum. So there has to be an approach that, by the way, only the United States can mobilize. We've been reminded once again, there really is only one country that can take the kind of leadership and do these things. Would the response to the Russians on Ukraine have taken place if the US didn't take the lead? The answer is no. Would we be able to shape a different outcome in Gaza without the US taking the lead in the aftermath? Israel obviously is dealing with what I call ISIS on its border. In all my media appearances here, I'm saying we, the United States, would not live with ISIS on our border. President Obama said we will destroy ISIS. What we did in Mosul basically required, almost leveling Mosul, although we didn't have to go on the ground because we had local partners who went on the ground. So that's what Israel's dealing with. But the aftermath, there has to be a different aftermath. You can't just go back to the way things were, and you can't just leave it because of what will emerge. When I say I can envision, by the way, Bahrain, the UAE, Morocco, Egypt, the Saudis, all playing a role in the aftermath. I can envision a Saudi-Israeli normalization deal, in part because the ideology of rejection would also have just been defeated. The stakes are very high here, because if the ideology of rejection looks like it succeeded because of what Hamas did, then you're going to find all the Sunni Arab states on the defensive. All their leaderships will be on the defensive. We've seen them on the defensive right now because here you have a hospital that everyone believes quickly accepts the idea that Israel bombed it, when in fact you can technically prove now that it was an Islamic Jihad rocket. But the emotions in the Arab world right now on the so-called Arab street have all the Arab leaderships basically adopting a position that reflects their concern about popular emotions at this point. So we have to get beyond where we are, and we have to take advantage, I hate to say it this way, we have to take advantage of this moment when it is completed. The worst thing in the world would be you go back and you just repeat the same mistakes of the past. And the same mistakes of the past are to think you don't have to do anything in Gaza, and basically you can freeze the situation forever and it'll be okay.
Right. Sorry, I just dropped out there for a second. Yedidia, in the time we have left, just a couple more minutes because Dennis has to jump at 6:30. One of the amazing things that has happened here in Israel is the amazing enlistment of civil society, right? To a lot of places and pockets, I would say, where the government's not functioning. That's a separate conversation. Why is the government not functioning? One day we'll have to answer those questions, but it's from the PR to media management to funding for the communities around Gaza to placing them in hotels and finding them lodging and food and equipment for soldiers. And I think there's probably not a single Israeli, and I would bet not a single American Jew who hasn't been involved in an email chain or a WhatsApp group or received a phone call or a letter soliciting, because there's a real need right now. In the last 3-4 minutes, how do you explain, because where we were just 2 weeks ago, right? I mean, your life, Yedidia, was about, can we create a compromise to end this crazy standoff and division within Israeli society? And unfortunately, we needed Hamas to do that for us.
Well, the covenant of faith that was eroded here in Israel the last year is coming back strong, solid, and very promising. You know, we do not agree, we Israelis, we do not agree about the destiny, about the vision of the state of Israel. We have different visions fighting each other. And for many years, we knew to act together despite these disputes. The last year, these disputes became a factor in the solidarity of Israelis. And it was a terrible year of our life as a nation, the last year before the war. What the war did, I'm not sure it's, solving it. I cannot tell you if this is just a makeup for the time being, or a real change, but for now, it's very clear. All the fingers of the Israeli society became a fist, one. Just to give you an example, I'm sitting on the board of Bank Leumi, the largest bank in Israel. Yesterday, we had a meeting of 3 hours asking ourselves what is the role of Stock Exchange Corporation, a bank, in this crisis, not only how to protect the bank, which is obvious, but what can we do? How much money we can give? In what way are we going to give it? What is the role? And you sit with business people, they know numbers, and they think about social issues as a main topic on the table.
Right.
And these are sophisticated people. It's even more so when you talk about people who are emotional daily. That's their life. So just to be practical, for example, Bank Leumi decided to adopt Be'eri. I was talking about Be'eri. Okay, more than 10% of the residents of Be'eri died. More than 10%. We don't know the exact numbers because some people are still missing from Be'eri. Imagine, it's 10 times, Yaakov, the number of people who died from Kibbutz Beta Shita in the Yom Kippur War, which is the mythology, Israeli mythology. 11 people died from one kibbutz in Yom Kippur War. Now it's more than 10 times in bed. So it's obvious that we are all together right now. Israelis are amazing. My sons who are in the army are telling me we need a diet after this war. Why? because whenever they want, they come out from the base, they're still in the base, and there's a place. And they stand there, and people from the area are coming with towels. Can you come with me to my home to take a shower? My son Adin says, obviously, yes. He goes there. They do not let them go back. No, you have to eat this. He says, I eat kosher. It's kosher. You must eat it. And on and on and on. Amazing. I really hope this will rectify society for the long run, not just for the period where we need each other so badly. Obviously, JPPI, we put on the table the issue of lechidut, of cohesiveness of civil society in Israel. This is a chance to make it happen for the longer run.
I've got to go.
That's a good message. Dennis, thank you very much for joining
Pleasure.
us. Pastor Dennis Rawson, JPPI president. You just turned into everyone a quiet weekend, hopefully ahead of us. Shabbat shalom.
See you on Sunday.